For as long as you've been alive, you've been told a simple story. You are a body moving through a physical world. A solid thing, born, aging, and eventually dying. A biological machine operating inside a universe of other machines. Straightforward, predictable, ordinary. But deep down, you've always known that explanation is too small for the questions you carry, too thin for the experiences you've had, too narrow for the strange moments in your life that didn't fit the rules you were taught. So let me ask you something bold. What if that entire story about who you are is outdated? What if the truth about your identity has been sitting in front of you this whole time, hidden not by deception, but by a worldview built in the 1600s that modern science quietly dismantled over a century ago? You've tried to change. You've tried to improve. You've tried to reshape your life through effort, losing weight, breaking habits, manifesting better outcomes, attracting better relationships, becoming more disciplined. You've visualized. You've affirmed. You've journaled. You've repeated all the techniques every self-help guru says should work. And yet here you are, still feeling stuck in the same patterns, the same emotional cycles, the same results that refuse to shift no matter how hard you push. And it's not because you failed. It's because you've been using the wrong operating system. You've been trying to upgrade your life while running reality on a worldview more than 300 years old. You've been trying to live as a Newtonian object in a quantum universe. Imagine installing today's most advanced software on a computer from 1995. It doesn't matter how brilliant the software is. The hardware can't run it. That's how most people try to change their lives. They use willpower, force, hustle, endless action, because that's what the old worldview said was necessary. But something extraordinary happened in the early 20th century. A group of physicists made discoveries so shocking that even they resisted accepting them. They found that reality at the smallest scale does not behave like a machine. Matter isn't solid. Particles don't act like miniature billiard balls. And perhaps most astonishing of all, the observer, the one who looks, plays a direct role in what becomes real. Quantum physics exposed something unimaginable. The universe isn't a cold mechanical system. It's a field, an interconnected, dynamic, ever-flowing field of energy and information. And you are not separate from that field. You are woven into it. You are participating in it. You are shaping it simply by being aware. So let me ask you a radical question. What would happen if you stopped living as a fixed physical object and started living as the quantum being you actually are? Because the moment you do, everything begins to shift. Look at your hand for a moment. Just lift it in front of you and observe. What do you see? You see skin, bone, flesh, something solid, something separate from everything else around you. A defined object, a boundary, a thing. That's the worldview we were all trained to accept without question. Newtonian thinking says you are a physical structure living inside a physical world, interacting with objects that are just as solid and separate as you are. In that worldview, life is a series of collisions between you and external circumstances. Something happens outside, you react inside. You push, reality pushes back. You want change? Then you must work harder. Exert more force, use more effort, take more action. If something doesn't shift, you blame your discipline, your motivation, your willpower. But here's the shocking truth. That worldview is outdated. Science hasn't operated on it for more than a century, yet we still live our lives as if we're stuck in that old paradigm. The universe, as understood today, is not a machine. It's not a predictable clockwork system with fixed outcomes. In fact, when scientists first began exploring the microscopic world, atoms, electrons, photons, they discovered behaviors so bizarre they couldn't explain them using the old rules. Particles acted like waves. Waves acted like particles. Things appeared and disappeared. Effects happened without clear causes. And most unsettling of all, the act of observing changed the outcome. This single discovery cracked the foundation of everything we believed. Because if the universe responds to observation, then observation is not passive. It is participatory. It is creative. It means your awareness isn't just floating inside reality. It is influencing it. Not metaphorically, not philosophically, literally. When researchers looked deeper, they found something even stranger. Atoms, the fundamental building blocks of matter, are almost entirely empty space. If an atom were the size of a massive stadium, the nucleus would be a tiny speck at the center. and the electrons would be tiny points buzzing far away near the outer seats. Everything in between? Space, not solidness, not density, space. So if atoms are mostly space and your body is made of atoms, what does that make you? Solid matter? Or organized energy? Think about it. The solidity you feel isn't because matter is solid. It's because energy holds patterns in place. What you call your body is really a structured field, a complex dance of frequencies, forces, charges, and probabilities. You are not a lump of matter. You are a coordinated vibration in a larger field of information, and that field responds to how you focus, how you observe, and most importantly, how you feel. This changes everything, because if you're not a fixed physical object, then your limitations aren't fixed either. Your identity isn't fixed. Your reality isn't fixed. From the moment you decide to stop fighting your own life, something hidden inside you begins to unlock, not because the world suddenly becomes easier, not because circumstances magically rearrange themselves, but because your inner stance shifts. You stop standing against reality and you start standing with it. And the moment that alignment happens, even slightly, your perception sharpens, your intuition strengthens, and the path ahead becomes clearer than ever before. This is the point where most people give up. And ironically, this is the point where everything actually begins. There's a stage in transformation that no one talks about. It's not glamorous. It doesn't feel powerful. It feels like confusion mixed with clarity, exhaustion mixed with energy, stillness mixed with impatience. You're not where you used to be, but you're also not where you're going. You're in between. This in-between stage is sacred, because it's here that your old identity dissolves and the new one starts forming. But you must learn to stand steady in this space, without running back to the familiar or rushing toward the unknown. In this stage, your observation becomes your compass. Instead of reacting, you start noticing. What triggers your fear? What activates your strength? What drains you? What expands you? You realize that every tiny signal your life gives you is feedback, guidance directing you to the next step. And when you watch these signals with neutrality instead of judgment, the hidden architecture of your reality reveals itself. You begin to see patterns, why certain people appear, why certain opportunities vanish, why certain emotions rise. There is a code behind everything, and you're finally learning how to read it. Once you understand this, something incredible happens. You stop trying to control outcomes. You stop negotiating with life from insecurity. You stop forcing things that were never meant for you. Instead, you begin to operate from a calm internal knowing. A.E., knowing that what belongs to you cannot pass you, and what passes you was never yours. This is where your energy gains weight. Your presence becomes heavier, and reality starts responding to you differently. Because now you're no longer someone lost, you're someone becoming. And life listens to those who are becoming far more than it. Listens to those who are begging. There comes a moment in your journey when you realize that the world isn't testing you, it's training you. And this realization changes everything. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? And instead you start asking, what is this trying to show me? The shift is subtle, but it's powerful enough to rewrite the trajectory of your life. Because the moment you stop viewing challenges as punishments, you unlock the ability to extract power from every experience. Suddenly, even the obstacles begin to feel like instructions. In this phase, your awareness becomes your greatest asset. You start noticing how life repeats the same lesson through different faces, different situations, and different timelines until you finally understand it. And when you do, the loop breaks. You move forward. The pattern dissolves. The weight lifts. This is how people evolve, not by escaping their problems, but by decoding them. And every time you decode a lesson, your consciousness expands just a little more, giving you a broader view of the landscape ahead. But expansion comes with its own strange side effect. Solitude. Not loneliness, solitude. A quiet space where you realize that the person you're becoming can't be built through the noise of the world. You withdraw, not because you're tired of people, but because you need to hear yourself. This silence is not empty. It's full of answers, full of clarity, full of the version of you that's trying to emerge. In this silence, you learn what you truly desire and what you've been pretending to desire just to fit in. You begin separating your authentic voice from the one society gave you. And once this separation begins, the transformation becomes irreversible. You start acting from intention instead of impulse. You stop seeking validation from people who don't even understand your path. You start trusting your internal signals more than external opinions. This is the stage where your self-belief starts rebuilding itself from the inside out. Not loudly, not publicly, but quietly, like a new foundation forming beneath the surface. Then slowly, reality adjusts. People treat you differently. Opportunities align more naturally. Your inner resistance decreases. Life starts flowing with you instead of against you, because now you're not reacting, you're responding. You're not chasing, you're attracting. You're not surviving, you're shaping. This is the stage where you finally understand. You weren't losing control. You were gaining alignment. There's a point in your evolution where you stop being driven by fear of what might go wrong and start being guided by the quiet truth of what feels right. This is subtle, but it's the difference between living in survival mode and living in creation mode. When you operate from fear, your mind compresses. You only see limitations, problems, risks, and obstacles. But when you shift into inner clarity, your awareness expands. You begin to notice possibilities that were invisible before. The world hasn't changed, you have. And the moment this internal shift happens, you start experiencing something you may not understand at first. Resistance from the outside world. People who knew the old version of you might question the new one. They may misunderstand your silence, your boundaries, your seriousness, your focus. They may even accuse you of changing as if that were a crime. What they don't realize is that you're not changing, you're returning to who you always were, beneath the noise. Their resistance is not a signal to stop. It's proof that you're moving. In this phase, you learn the art of detachment. Not the cold, emotionless kind, but the wise, steady, grounded detachment that comes from knowing your path is bigger than temporary opinions. You stop explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You stop trying to convince anyone of your worth. You stop seeking closure where none exists. Instead, you choose peace over pride, clarity over chaos, and direction over distraction. This is the moment your inner world becomes stronger than the outer world. And when your inner world becomes stronger, your decisions start aligning with your highest truth. You stop making choices from fear of missing out or fear of judgment. You begin making choices from intention, alignment, and purpose. The moment you choose what is truly right for you, the universe quietly rearranges itself to support you. Opportunities appear with uncanny timing. Conversations lead to openings you never considered. Even setbacks begin to feel like guided redirections rather than failures. This is where you realize that life responds not to your hopes or your anxieties, but to your energy. If your energy is scattered, your path will reflect it. If your energy is steady, your path will stabilize. This is why your inner state becomes your greatest responsibility. Because when you shift internally, everything connected to you shifts externally. And slowly, almost silently, you cross a threshold. You stop being a seeker and start becoming a creator. You stop living by default and start living by design. You stop hoping life will change and start observing how your presence reshapes it. There comes a moment in your journey when you finally understand that breakthroughs don't arrive with noise, they arrive with subtle shifts. A small thought that feels truer than anything you've believed before. A tiny realization that dissolves an entire layer of confusion. A quiet moment where something clicks inside you, and you suddenly see what was always in front of you. Transformation doesn't happen because life changes. It happens because your lens changes. And once the lens shifts, nothing looks the same again. In this stage, your old reactions start losing their power. Things that used to trigger you don't affect you the same way. Not because the problem disappeared, but because you're no longer operating from the same identity. Your inner space has widened. You've created distance between stimulus and response, and in that distance lives your new strength. You observe instead of absorb. You notice instead of react. You understand instead of resist. This shift alone begins rewriting the structure of your reality from the inside out. But with this new clarity comes an unavoidable truth. Not everything can stay with you. Some habits feel too small. Some people no longer match your frequency. Some dreams feel outdated. You begin releasing things you once clung to, not out of pain, but out of recognition. They don't fit who you're becoming. Letting go stops feeling like a loss and starts feeling like a necessary alignment. And the more you release, the more space you create for what is meant to arrive. During this stage, you also start experiencing waves of instinct that feel unusually accurate. You'll feel a pull toward certain actions without logical explanations. You'll feel repelled by things that once felt normal. This intuition isn't new. It was always there. You're just finally quiet enough to hear it. And when you trust it, Reality syncs with you in ways that feel almost orchestrated. Timings align. Encounters make sense. Choices feel supported. There's a rhythm underneath everything, and for the first time, you're moving to it instead of fighting against it. Then comes the realization that changes everything. Your life isn't responding to who you were, it's responding to who you're becoming. This understanding dissolves anxiety. You stop revisiting old stories. You stop trying to fix what no longer represents you. You invest energy into the direction you're growing toward, not the one you're breaking away from. This is how you step out of your past without even looking back, and slowly, without trying to impress anyone or explain anything, you start embodying a new frequency. People notice the calm before they notice the transformation. They sense the certainty before they hear the words. They feel the shift before they understand the reason. Because when you change your inner world, your outer world has no choice but to respond. There is a stage in your evolution where you stop chasing clarity and begin embodying it, not because all the answers have arrived, but because you finally trust yourself enough to move, even when the path isn't fully visible. This is the shift from seeking certainty to creating momentum. You realize that clarity isn't something you wait for. It's something that unfolds through action, through observation, through presence. Every step you take reveals the next step, and this unfolding becomes your new rhythm. In this phase, you begin to notice the subtle difference between what drains you and what aligns you. Your energy becomes your internal navigation system. If something feels heavy, forced, chaotic, or dull, you recognize it as a signal. And if something feels peaceful, even if it scares you, you know it's calling you forward. You stop ignoring these signals. You stop betraying your own intuition just to maintain comfort or familiarity. You start honoring what your inner self has been whispering for years. But honoring these signals often means stepping into the unknown. This is where people hesitate. This is where most turn back, because the unknown looks like a void. It feels like a risk. Yet for you, at this stage, the unknown begins to feel more honest than the known. You're no longer scared of walking away from things that don't grow you. You're more scared of staying stuck in a place where your potential suffocates. This courage doesn't make your path easier. It makes your purpose louder. And with this courage comes a deeper self-respect. You stop allowing inconsistencies in your life. You stop tolerating energy that feels off. You stop negotiating with situations that show you their truth but expect you to pretend otherwise. You listen, you observe, and you choose with intention. This is where your boundaries become natural, not forced. You don't create boundaries to push people away. You create them to protect the version of you that's evolving. As you strengthen internally, something extraordinary begins to happen. Your presence becomes directive. People respond differently. Your words carry weight. Your silence carries meaning. Your energy shifts rooms before you even speak. You're no longer trying to be seen, you are seen. Not because you're louder, but because you're clearer. And clarity always radiates. Then finally, you realize the truth behind every transformation. Your life changes. The moment you stop settling for the version of yourself that once needed survival. When you stop living from fear. When you stop operating from past wounds. When you stop shrinking to fit old spaces, life opens. Paths appear. Ideas spark. The world rearranges around your new frequency. This is the stage where you don't just grow, you emerge. There's a turning point on this path where you begin to understand that your transformation isn't something you do, it's something you allow. You stop trying to micromanage every detail of your journey. You stop forcing timelines. You stop demanding instant results. Instead, you create space. Space for growth, space for clarity, space for alignment. And in this space, life finally has room to move toward you. The strangest part? When you stop pushing, everything starts progressing faster. In this stage, you develop a new relationship with time. You stop seeing delays as denial. You stop seeing waiting as weakness. You realize that some shifts need time to stabilize inside you before they can manifest outside you. The old you was impatient because impatience came from fear. Fear of losing, fear of missing out, fear of not being enough. The new you is patient because patience comes from trust. You trust your direction. You trust your energy. You trust that what's meant for you is already moving toward you, even if you can't see it yet. As this trust grows, another change begins to unfold. You become extremely selective about what you give your attention to. You start withdrawing your energy from drama, from noise, from negativity that used to hook you easily. You stop participating in conversations that drain you. You stop explaining yourself where explanation isn't valued. You stop reacting to things that are beneath your evolution. Your silence becomes intentional. Your focus becomes sacred, and your priorities become sharper than ever before. This is also the stage where your inner voice becomes louder than the voices around you. You begin recognizing when something feels right, even if no one else understands it. You begin sensing when something is wrong, even if everyone else agrees with it. You no longer look outward for validation. You check inward for alignment. And once you trust yourself this deeply, you stop living life from a place of permission. You start living from a place of authenticity. With authenticity comes an unexpected gift, effortlessness. Not because life becomes easy, but because you become aligned. Decisions that used to feel heavy become simple. Paths that felt confusing become clear. Opportunities that once needed chasing begin arriving with natural flow. You're no longer fighting for your place in the world. You're stepping into it naturally. And then, almost silently, a realization arrives that changes everything. You're not becoming someone new. You're remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. This remembrance brings a softness, a strength, a grounded presence that can't be shaken by circumstances. You feel rooted. You feel aware. You feel connected to something deeper than logic, a knowing, a calm, a direction that doesn't need explanation. There comes a phase in your evolution when you begin to feel a strange, almost sacred detachment from things that once controlled you, not because you've stopped caring, but because you've started seeing. You see the patterns behind your emotions. You see the intentions behind people's actions. You see the lessons behind your struggles. And once you see, you can't unsee. Awareness becomes your freedom. Awareness becomes your armor. Awareness becomes your power. In this stage, your emotional triggers reveal themselves as teachers. Instead of reacting automatically, you pause. You observe the rise of fear, the spark of irritation, the pull of insecurity, not to suppress them, but to understand them. And in understanding them, you release them. You realize that most of your pain didn't come from the world. It came from the meanings you attached to it. When you shift the meaning, the pain dissolves. This is when you begin stepping out of your old emotional identity. At the same time, your relationship with discomfort transforms. You stop avoiding it. You stop fearing it. You start recognizing that discomfort is often the doorway to the next version of you. Every time you face something that feels uncomfortable, an honest conversation, a personal boundary, a difficult decision, you expand. You grow, you strengthen. Discomfort becomes proof that you're stepping into a larger space within yourself. As you grow, you also develop a new kind of clarity about people. You stop idolizing them. You stop demonizing them. You see them as reflections, mirrors showing you aspects of yourself. The supportive ones reflect your potential. The challenging ones reflect your unfinished lessons. The draining ones reflect your old patterns. The inspiring ones reflect your future self. This understanding removes the emotional chaos from your relationships. Instead of taking everything personally, you start taking everything consciously. And with this consciousness comes one of the most liberating shifts of all. You stop needing closure from others. You realize that closure doesn't come from their apology, their explanation, their regret. Closure comes from you deciding the story is over. You stop seeking peace from the same people who disrupted it. You choose to close the door quietly, gracefully, internally. And when you close it from within, it stays closed. Slowly, your entire frequency reorganizes itself. You become grounded in your truth. You become selective with your energy. You become intentional with your time. You become honest with your emotions. You become aligned with your direction, and the world starts responding to the version of you that no longer lives in reaction, but in awareness. You weren't healing to return to who you were. You were healing to become who you were always meant to be. This clarity marks the beginning of a new internal authority. You trust your path even when it's uncertain. You trust your choices even when they're difficult. There comes a moment in your inner evolution when you realize that the life you're stepping into requires a different version of you, one that no longer negotiates with old wounds, old habits, or old identities. This is the phase where your transformation becomes less about fixing yourself and more about choosing yourself, choosing your peace, choosing your growth, choosing your direction, choosing your frequency, even when it means walking away from everything familiar. In this stage, you begin to feel a quiet strength rising inside you. It's not loud, not aggressive, not dramatic. It's calm, solid, unshakable. You start recognizing That real confidence isn't the absence of doubt, it's the ability to move forward even when doubt whispers in the background. You're not pretending to be strong anymore. You are strong because your strength comes from awareness, not ego. This is also the point where you stop getting pulled into unnecessary battles. You no longer feel the need to prove your worth, argue your truth, or force understanding. People who don't get you simply don't get access to the deeper layers of you. Your energy becomes priceless. Your presence becomes intentional. You conserve your power instead of spilling it everywhere. This shift alone transforms the quality of your life more than any external achievement ever could. You begin to understand the value of emotional discipline, not suppression, discipline. The ability to feel deeply without being controlled by feelings. The ability to stay centered when life tries to pull you sideways. The ability to choose silence over reaction, clarity over chaos, direction over distraction. This internal discipline becomes your anchor, keeping you steady while everything around you shifts. And with this steadiness comes a profound inner alignment. Your desires begin matching your actions. Your intuition begins matching your decisions. Your vision begins matching your identity. You stop being at war with yourself. You stop contradicting your own truth. You stop abandoning your inner signals just to maintain external peace. This alignment is the birthplace of a new kind of power, the kind that reshapes reality without force. Then something beautiful begins to happen. Your future stops feeling like a distant fantasy and starts feeling like an inevitable unfolding. You sense it in your body before you see it with your eyes. You feel the pull of your next chapter, the quiet momentum building behind your choices, the subtle confirmation that you're finally moving in the direction your soul always intended. You notice synchronicities. You attract situations that match your growth. You meet people who feel aligned with your evolution. You're no longer living from who you've been. You stop hesitating. You stop doubting your path every time it gets difficult. Instead, you trust the unfolding. You trust the timing. You trust the version of you that's emerging with every step. There comes a stage in your inner evolution when you finally understand that alignment is not a one-time event, it's a continuous tuning. Every thought you choose, every boundary you set, every moment you stay true to yourself instead of collapsing into old patterns, all of it contributes to the frequency you're building. And at this stage, you begin to realize just how powerful your subtle choices truly are. It's not the grand decisions that shape your path. It's the quiet ones you make when no one is watching. This is the phase where you become deeply aware of your internal state. You notice when your energy drops. You notice when your mind slips into old narratives. You notice when your body tightens, when your intuition whispers, when your peace shifts. You no longer ignore these signals. You no longer dismiss them as mood swings or random emotions. You understand that these signals are your guidance system, your internal compass, showing you exactly where you're aligned and where you're not. As this awareness deepens, you naturally begin to withdraw from spaces that don't nourish your growth. Not dramatically, not with anger, simply with clarity. Conversations that once felt entertaining now feel empty. Patterns that once felt familiar now feel draining. People who once kept you distracted now feel misaligned with your direction. This isn't isolation, it's elevation. You're not pulling away from the world. You're rising above the version of you that needed noise to feel complete. With this elevation comes a radical honesty with yourself. You stop sugarcoating your excuses. You stop protecting your limitations. You stop lying to yourself about what you want. You confront your patterns gently but truthfully. You begin to see exactly where you've been holding yourself back. And instead of blaming the world, you take responsibility for your internal landscape. This is where your growth becomes irreversible. Because you're no longer running from your shadows, you're integrating them. At the same time, you begin experiencing a deeper inner stability. Circumstances may shift, people may change, challenges may arise, but your center remains steady. Not because life becomes easier, but because you become more grounded. You don't get swept up by every external wave. You don't lose yourself in every emotional fluctuation. Your peace becomes your anchor, and your intuition becomes your direction. And then something profound begins to unfold. You start seeing evidence of your internal transformation reflected in your external world. You notice how different choices bring different outcomes, how different boundaries bring different people, how different self-belief brings different opportunities. You realize that the universe had always been responding to you, not your words, not your wishes, but your energy. Now that your energy has shifted, reality adjusts accordingly. There is a phase in your evolution when you finally understand that the universe isn't just responding to your intentions, it's responding to your identity. Not who you claim to be, but who you truly are beneath your thoughts, your habits, your doubts, and your patterns. And at this stage, something powerful begins to shift. You stop trying to manifest from desire and begin manifesting from alignment. Your energy stops asking and starts commanding. This is where you realize that your inner world is no longer chaotic the way it once was. You're not fighting yourself at every step. You're not drowning in overthinking. You're not chasing validation to feel secure. Instead, you move with a grounded clarity that feels new yet strangely familiar. You're not forcing outcomes, you're preparing for them. You're not begging life to change. You're becoming the version of you that naturally attracts that change. This internal shift is subtle, but its effects are enormous. At this stage, you become extremely conscious of your self-talk. You recognize how your thoughts either expand you or shrink you. You catch yourself whenever you slip into fear-driven narratives. You replace assumptions with awareness, impulsiveness with intention, and insecurity with truth. This is where your mind stops being your enemy and starts becoming your ally. You realize that mastery isn't about controlling your thoughts. It's about steering your focus. The deeper you go, the more you understand that your old identity simply cannot follow you into your new reality. Not the habits built from survival. Not the stories soaked in shame. Not the versions of you that were created just to be liked or accepted. You begin shedding layers, not dramatically, but naturally. Things start falling away because they no longer match your frequency. And for the first time, you don't resist the release. You allow it. As you shed these layers, your inner voice becomes unmistakably clear. Your intuition stops whispering and starts directing. You sense which opportunities are aligned and which are distractions. You feel when someone's energy is right and when it's not. You notice which paths expand you and which paths shrink you. This intuition becomes so strong that ignoring it feels physically uncomfortable. You finally understand. Intuition isn't mystical. It's your future self guiding you. And then arrives one of the biggest breakthroughs of this stage. You stop confusing alignment with comfort. You realize that the most aligned decisions are often the most uncomfortable ones because they pull you out of your old identity and into the one you're meant to embody. You start choosing what's right over what's easy. You start choosing growth over familiarity. You start choosing purpose over distraction. And the moment you consistently choose alignment over avoidance, life begins opening in ways you once thought were impossible. There comes a moment on this path where you finally begin to understand the architecture of your own consciousness, how every thought, emotion, memory, and belief is part of a much bigger internal system shaping your reality from the inside out. And as you see this system clearly, something profound dawns on you. Nothing in your life has ever been random. Every pattern had a purpose. Every setback was intelligence. Every closed door was protection. The universe wasn't punishing you. It was preparing you. In this stage, you stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What is this shaping within me?" The shift is subtle but transformative. Challenges no longer feel like attacks. Delays no longer feel like curses. Instead, you begin to see life as a mirror, reflecting your beliefs, revealing your blind spots, pointing toward the next version of you. And once you understand this, suffering loses its grip, not because your life becomes perfect, but because your awareness becomes powerful. This is the stage where your relationship with discomfort changes completely. You stop running from it. You stop numbing it. You stop distracting yourself from it. Instead, you lean in. You observe. You feel. You listen. You recognize that discomfort isn't the enemy, it's the doorway. It's the signal that a deeper truth wants to emerge. And you begin to trust that the version of you on the other side of discomfort is always wiser, stronger, more aligned. Then something unexpected happens. Your emotional reactions become slower. Not because you suppress them, but because you understand them. You catch yourself before spiraling into old patterns. You notice triggers without being consumed by them. You choose responses instead of collapsing into impulses. This is emotional mastery. Not numbness, not detachment, but presence. You become aware of your inner world with such clarity that it becomes nearly impossible for external chaos to control you. At this point, your self-worth starts shifting too. Not the fragile worthiness based on achievements, approval, or validation. not the conditional worthiness that needs the world to agree. This is deeper. This is the kind of worthiness that comes from knowing who you are beneath all illusions. You stop negotiating your value. You stop begging for permission. You stop shrinking to fit into places you've outgrown. You become aligned with your truth, and this alignment becomes unshakable. With this inner foundation, your relationship with the future changes. You stop fearing uncertainty. You stop obsessing over outcomes. You stop clinging to timelines that were built from old versions of you. Instead, you start trusting timing, not passive hope, but active surrender. You begin to feel that the universe is not chaotic but intelligent, not indifferent but responsive. And you finally realize that life doesn't unfold when you force it. It unfolds when you're ready for it. From this point onward, something subtle begins to shift, not in the world outside, but in the space behind your thoughts, the place where impulses form before they ever become action. You start noticing that every desire has a signature vibration, a kind of inner frequency that rises the moment you imagine something with clarity. Most people let this frequency fade within seconds, but you're learning to hold it, stabilize it, keep it alive long enough for reality to notice. And the moment reality notices, it begins to reorganize itself around you in small, precise ways. A message arrives at the perfect time. A coincidence aligns too perfectly. A delay that should have been frustrating ends up guiding you towards something essential. Nothing loud, nothing dramatic, just quiet evidence that your observation is no longer passive. It is becoming directive. You'll feel a strange confidence growing, the kind that doesn't come from accomplishments, but from understanding the mechanism behind them. You stop chasing outcomes. You stop forcing paths. You stop trying to control timing. Instead, you focus on maintaining the internal signature of what you desire, because you now understand that the outer world is nothing more than the echo of your inner stability. When you hold the signal, the echo has no choice but to appear. When you waver, the echo dissolves. It's precise, mathematical, almost clinical once you see the pattern clearly, and something else begins to happen. Resistance loses power. Fear becomes thin. Doubt becomes slow. You don't fight them anymore. You simply observe them the same way you observe everything else. And the moment you observe them, they weaken, because observation is the light that dissolves anything built in the dark. With each passing day, you feel less like someone responding to life and more like someone conducting it, shaping it, bending it gently through the way you choose to perceive. Slowly, you realize that the most powerful thing you can do is stay aligned long enough for the world to adjust. Not react, not panic, not rush, just hold. And in that holding, you become the still point around which everything else begins to move. The more stable your inner frequency becomes, the more fluidly the outer world rearranges itself. You're not forcing reality anymore. You're inviting it, guiding it. And it listens, not because you demand, but because you finally understand the language it speaks. There comes a moment in this process where you begin to sense the architecture of your reality, not metaphorically, but almost as if you can feel the invisible scaffolding behind events. You notice that certain situations repeat not because the world is stuck, but because your observation is looping in the same pattern. The moment you shift the way you observe, even slightly, the entire structure reshapes itself. People respond differently. Opportunities that once felt locked suddenly open. Paths that seemed impossible become strangely accessible. It's as if the world had been waiting for you to adjust your internal angle before it revealed the next doorway. You start recognizing that nothing outside has ever been random. Every moment, every delay, every unexpected turn was responding to the texture of your awareness. And as this realization deepens, you begin to interact with life with more precision. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you begin asking, "What is this reflecting inside me?" It's a small shift, but a revolutionary one. Because when you stop seeing events as obstacles and start seeing them as mirrors, you stop fighting them and start decoding them. And once you decode them, they lose their power to control you. Your internal state becomes the primary instrument you tune each morning. You wake up and check the quality of your awareness the same way someone checks the weather before stepping outside. Is it clear? Is it heavy? Is it scattered? Is it aligned? And the beautiful part is, alignment is no longer something mysterious or spiritual. It becomes a skill, a muscle, something you can adjust on command. You breathe differently. You think differently. You choose differently. and reality adjusts accordingly, almost instantly. As this mastery grows, you begin noticing that the world responds not to your emotions but to the emotional frequency beneath them. You may feel fear, but if your underlying frequency is clarity, life reflects clarity. You may feel doubt, but if your base signal is trust, life reflects trust. The external mirrors the deeper layer, not the surface noise. This is why observing your inner state without reacting to it becomes such a powerful act. The moment you observe without collapsing into the emotion, you free yourself from its gravitational pull, and in that freedom your signal becomes stable again. Gradually, you step into a phase where your thoughts stop feeling like random chatter and start feeling like instruments, tools. You can shape, refine, and direct with intention. You think less but with more precision. You feel more but with less chaos. And the world around you begins to match that exact level of coherence. People who once felt distant start showing up. Opportunities that felt unlikely become natural. Life stops pushing against you. It starts cooperating with you because you're finally offering it a stable frequency to respond to. There is a point, quiet, almost unnoticeable, where everything you've been practicing stops feeling like a technique and starts feeling like your natural state. You don't remind yourself to observe. You don't try to stay aligned. You don't force yourself to maintain a frequency. It simply happens effortlessly because you've crossed the threshold where awareness becomes your default mode. And when that happens, the world around you begins to move in ways that feel almost orchestral, timed, coordinated, precise. You start meeting the right people at the right moment without planning it. You receive insights without searching for them. You take the perfect action without overthinking it. It's flow, but not the chaotic kind. It's the flow that comes from finally syncing your internal rhythm with the rhythm of existence itself. In this state, you no longer see reality as something outside you. You see it as an extension of your internal narrative, an unfolding story that responds to your clarity, your steadiness, your understanding. You begin noticing that the version of you that used to overthink, overreact, and overexplain starts fading into the background, replaced by a version that feels grounded, centered, almost unshakably calm. Even when situations arise that once triggered fear or doubt, they no longer destabilize you. They appear, you observe, and the moment you observe without collapsing, they dissolve. Not because you forced them to disappear, but because you refuse to fuel them with your attention. You now understand something that most people never realize. Reality bends not through force, but through coherence. The more coherent your internal state becomes, the more elegantly the world shapes itself around you. You don't need to manifest through repetition. You don't need to beg the universe for signs. You don't need to chase outcomes as if they're running away from you. Instead, you hold the signal steady long enough for everything to reorganize itself in your favor. And it does, slowly at first, then rapidly, then so consistently that you start to trust the process without hesitation. With this trust comes an entirely new way of moving through life. You stop planning out of fear and start choosing out of clarity. You stop doubting your path and start listening to your internal compass. You stop asking, will this work? And begin asking, is this aligned with the frequency I've chosen? And the answer comes every time, not in words, but in feeling. An unmistakable pull toward the right choice, the right action, the right path. Eventually, you reach a realization that changes everything. Reality was never resisting you. It was waiting for you to become stable enough to guide it, calm enough to shape it, clear enough to communicate with it. And now you can. This is the moment where your observation stops being a tool and becomes your power.